Hey everyone, it's us again. Yes, we are now live with yet another episode of Live with Marcel and Kilani. Kilani, want to say hi?
Yeah, welcome back, everyone. It's been a couple weeks since we have been on. I was in Singapore for a little bit, and then I know you got sick for a little bit, so we had to take a couple weeks off. But we're back, and we have some exciting stuff coming up in today's episode.
We do. If you, that depends, of course, on whether or not you want to take it too seriously, because that's the bridge of our topic today. Today, we're actually going to talk about taking work too seriously, and it's a common factor in a lot of the coaching that we do. Is that we very often. See people that you just take their work so seriously to a point where, number one is they become an absolute buzzkill. But number two is that, they burn out, right? And a lot of the questions that we have from kind of our clients is how do I how do I stop myself from doing that, right? And it is really interesting because if we look in corporate life, we're very often judged for how we show up at work. And there does seem to be, in many corporate cultures, there does still seem to be this, I guess, kind of like almost an unwritten requirement, right? That we take our work seriously. And if we, and I know this from, plenty of people who tend to be playful as human beings, just as people, is that very often they get frowned upon. Oh, I hear Blue in the background. She's making a comment.
She's ready for her third dinner. She's a hobbit. For those of you
That's right.
For our channel, that's my cat Blue. You'll either hear her meowing in the background or you'll see her running around. She's super busy.
Yeah, absolutely. She likes to take things very seriously, especially when it comes down to food. Yeah, so she's very serious about food. So she might want to chime in. And I see we have Charlotte chimed in. So yeah, unfortunately, Charlotte, we didn't get to connect with you when Kilani was here on a trip. She was with her boyfriend, and we made it a vacation. So we didn't actually do any work this that period, and we had a great time together. So thanks for asking. Yeah. So
hopefully we'll get to do some work in Singapore sometime. But as for that trip, that one was just leisure, just family time.
Yeah, it was awesome. Yeah, it was really, really nice. So Kilani, do you have any examples or even maybe even personal experiences with taking life or work a little bit too seriously?
Yeah, I mean, I think the majority of people, as you said, take life too seriously, especially take work and their jobs too seriously. I think that's probably one of the most common things that we see, especially in a world that you mentioned praises that busyness, that kind of heavy energy at work, right? Or even energy at work. Yeah. And the first thing that comes to my mind, there's definitely client examples I can share as well. But the first one, and I think we can both laugh about this, is me as a teenager. I was, or even as a kid, I was always very, very serious. I took everything I did very seriously. And it served me in some ways, but looking back, it's almost kind of funny. When you look back at yourself and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that I acted like that or that I was like that. And for me, everything was just the biggest deal. I was like, I need to be successful in this. I need to get the best grade on this, or else, nothing else is going to work in my life. And it was always, 0 to 100, black and white. And while that may have gotten me places to some extent, I was also really stressed out. I was depressed most of the time. I had very low self-worth and self-value. And it wasn't until I actually started to reframe that and still being able to work hard, but bringing this essence of lightness, of fun into the work that I was doing, that I not only was able to achieve similar results, but was also able to feel happy and fulfilled at the same time. And that's something that I work with my clients a lot. Actually, someone I spoke to on the phone this morning, she reminds me a lot of who I was as a teenager. There goes Blue running around.
Oh, sorry, Blue.
She's got a lot to say today.
So sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, but I was speaking to one of my clients today who we've been working together for a while, and though she's older than a teenager, she reminds me a lot of how I was in my teenage years. And we, through our sessions, we see this common theme come up where she comes to this realization that she doesn't need to take things as seriously as she is, and that things will turn out regardless of, or probably even better when she takes a step back from that seriousness. And so we've gone through this in a number of areas in her life, and we've started to recognize that pattern of, oh wait, being serious, at least overly serious, doesn't actually help me get anywhere in life, and rather it tends to block me. It tends to block the inspiration, the ideas, connecting with people. And so I think seriousness is one of those things that in moderation or in the right amounts is a really important thing. But when we take it too far, it sabotages us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you know, as you were saying, that kind of reminded me, you know, as like I was doing, and this was, you know, during the pandemic, and I'm sure we've all, you know, done this, right? Is during the pandemic when we found ourselves with more time, we did some experimenting, and I didn't experiment with mushrooms, but I did experiment with you know, meditation and things like that. And I was really, you know, practicing taking that meditation because I was having so much anxiety around the whole pandemic back in those days. And I remember one meditational exercise that I had to do, which was visiting my future self. And, you know, myself at, you know, 80 years old, or, you know, like 20, 30 years down the line, and asking my future self for advice, right? You know, it's like, what are, you know, kind of, what are one or two things that, you know, you need to tell me that's going to help me in my life. And the first piece of advice that my elderly self gave me was stop taking life so seriously. You know, and I think that is probably, you know, a piece of advice that most elderly versions of people would give themselves, right? Because I hear that that's a very common regret, is that, you know, people who then take life so seriously, they just forget to have fun. And, you know, when you're at the end of your life and you don't have that much time left anymore, what do you want to be spending that time on? Do you want to spend that time on more seriousness or more fun? Right. You know, and I think a lot of these people discover that, you know, living a life in seriousness can come at a tremendous cost. And that cost, of course, is lost time, right? Lost time of experiencing life in a different way. You know, another great example, and I love this example, is my wife is a school teacher, and she has a colleague whose daughter is now in high school, and she's a climber. She loves to climb. That's her passion. She, you know, if she could, and by the way, she's like an international level climber, rock climber. She's a speed climber, so she climbs these really fast walls really fast. That's her passion. She loves doing this kind of stuff. And she slacks at school in the sense that, you know, when at this school is kind of high performing school. So she does the minimal amount of work at school to be able to pass her grades so that she can spend her time rock climbing, because that's what she loves to do. And she's not failing school. She's getting like B's and C's and, you know, maybe an occasional D, but she's passing. And it got to a point where the principal actually called in the parent, and who was also a teacher at the school, and kind of said, hey, listen, you know, I think you need to have a talk with your daughter because your daughter is failing school. And she's like, what? How's she failing school? She's passing. And you know, the principal said, yeah, but she's getting, you know, B's, C's, and D's, and she should be, you know, kind of an A+ student. And the teacher says, why? You know, how is being an A+ student going to make her happier? Right. You know, and I thought that was really powerful. You know, so, hey, Charles is chiming in. He says, greetings from Hong Kong. Talk about teachers. Charles is a leadership guy, but also comes from an education background. So I'm sure you can completely relate, Charles, with the conversation that we're having right now. So this, yeah.
I was just going to say, Charles has a great podcast too.
Oh yes, absolutely, yeah, and and um, and what we can learn from that, right, is that very often it's society in general, and not just corporations. It's how we're raised. If we're raised in a society and in a culture that demands nothing less from us than excellence, and for some reason we're not allowed to just have fun, right, and that we always that fun is the only option you have is being successful as an A+ student, for example. um, Chances are we're going to create human beings who don't know how to have fun, and only know how to accomplish things, right, and there's a danger in that. There's an absolute cost in creating a culture of drones that only know how to perform. And I'm actually going to, we got another comment coming up here. Yeah, and it's absolutely. So somebody mentions, I'll just pop that up here for a second so everybody can read. Yeah, that stuff, absolutely. If the basic needs are not being met, um, you know, but and that's, of course, having fun requires kind of a mindset change. Absolutely, right. It's taking it's like that example of I think it was Xerox one when many years ago when they delivered thousands and thousands of this new copier all around the country to discover that they didn't work, and then they had to have this emergency board meeting at 2 o'clock in the morning because everybody had to oh my God, our customers are going to be unhappy and it's going to be, and the CEO is kind of sitting there and said, when was the last time somebody died from a copier not working? Right. How bad is this really? Right. And I think that's that kind of courage is necessary for us to be able to really kind of put the finger on that and kind of say, hey guys, wait, let's just wait just a minute, right? It's like, how bad are things really, right? It's like, rather than having this catastrophe mind. And the reason why this is so important, and actually, I want to throw up a slide here for everyone. So I'm gonna pull that up. All right, it is actually a really interesting term, and it comes from evolutionary biology, and it's called neoteny. And neoteny is a really interesting concept, and it is a theory. And the theory is that our ancestors and also our kind of bipedal relatives, like monkeys and apes and all of these kind of things, is that they all had high foreheads as babies, as children. But then as they became adults, the forehead flattens. And if you notice the difference here between kind of a baby chimpanzee and a adult chimpanzee, you can see the difference in forehead structure. And what these evolutionary biologists and psychologists are theorizing is that somewhere in our evolutionary cycle there was a glitch. We basically stayed babies. Our brains didn't mature in that sense. Now, from a maturity standpoint, you want to think of it in this way: is that why is a chimpanzee baby's forehead high versus an adult brain? And the reason is because there's an area of their brain, which is known as the prefrontal cortex, which we have as well, that is required when they are children because they learn through play. Right. So if you've ever seen videos of monkey and chimpanzee babies, they're very, very mischievous, right? And they're always getting themselves into trouble, and they're always testing things out, and they're always playing. But that play has a significant role in the role they're going to play in their tribe. And in that play, they're learning really important skills like social skills, how to hunt, how to forage for food, how to how to develop a kind of a sense of their place basically in that tribe in terms of status. All of those things are really important for once they turn adults. But at some point in time in their development, it doesn't benefit them anymore to be playing that way, and so that part of the brain then atrophies, it disappears, and they become all work, no play. And so if you look at an adult chimpanzee, they don't, number one, they don't tend to have the same degree of patience, right, as with their kids as we might have, but they're all work, right? They're all work, very little play, and that's kind of how life looks like for them. And so we can theorize from that, right? And we of course know from neuroscience that the prefrontal cortex that we have, right, that's keeping our forehead kind of high, is extremely important for things like empathy, for collaboration, for play, for imagination, creativity, you name it. All of those aspects, those things that we need to be successful in life, live here. But the hard work stuff, the serious work stuff, so to speak, the stuff that an adult chimpanzee would do, us showing up at work without any form of humor or play or anything like that, that is actually in a much deeper area of the brain. And it's all, the basal ganglia and all of those kind of things. And those structures of the brain are much more automatic, right? And so in a way, when we want to be drones and we just want to run on automatic pilot, then this guy stops working. And when that stops working, we prevent ourselves, we detrain ourselves from being able to be creative, from being able to be imaginative, from being able to be empathetic with other human beings. All of those things disappear because, in physiology, we know that if you don't use it, you lose it. And it's like our muscles. When we train our muscles and our muscles become bigger, when we stop training, they don't stay big. They shrink back down. And the same thing happens in our brains. Is in a way, the human brain works like a muscle. And so the more that we practice and we train that prefrontal cortex, the stronger it becomes. There's amazing research that's also done, for example, on like Buddhist monks who spend their lives meditating, and we can see through neuroplasticity how these people's prefrontal cortices, because they live in this space of empathy and compassion and happiness and playfulness and all of those kind of things, that's very important to them. And that part of the brain has a lot of connections. All of those neurons are so super connected, like their own little mini supercomputers in our supercomputer, right? And so imagine a kind of every single one of your employees having a supercomputer of imagination and creativity and all of those kind of things that is readily accessible. But it can only be trained through play and when we don't take things so seriously, which is in a way kind of counterintuitive. And I think that's why so many leaders struggle, right? Because that counterintuitiveness, right, is what really prevents a lot of people from really acting on this knowledge. People might know that, yeah, when I let my people play and I let them have fun, chances are they're going to be more productive. They're going to do better at work. They're going to make less mistakes. But when push comes to shove, we don't have the courage to tell people to slow down. and one of the best pieces of advice you can give an employee that is struggling to meet a deadline is to slow down, not to speed up, as counterintuitive as this. And we're always looking at how can we drive people, how can we make people work harder? And the way that we do that is actually by making them do less, right? And that is what is so counterintuitive. And another piece of research that solidifies this, right, is known as the Yerkes-Dodson rule. And the Yerkes-Dodson rule is that we have a degree of stress and arousal that's necessary for us to be able to perform at our best, but that works like a curve. And that the more stimulation and the more arousal that we have in our brains, we reach a peak point. But then when we have too much, then actually our performance drops on the other end, and that's what makes it a bell curve. And neuroscience has proven this, is that we know from for example from kind of our neurobiology and the neurotransmitters that we produce when we're actually in arousal, things like cortisol and adrenaline and noradrenaline, all of those kind of things, they stimulate the brain and they make us pay attention really well. So there's an ideal cocktail, right, of things like dopamine, together with and also cortisol and adrenaline and all of those kind of things, serotonin, and when you have that perfect mix, then you're in the zone. Your brain is kind of like this hyper kind of focused machine. And we've all experienced it, and I'm sure we all experience it maybe one, 2 or 3 times a day. But it's not consistent because we're biological beings. We don't stay in the zone like robots could potentially stay in the zone. And we don't have that capacity. And as humans, we can sometimes get a little addicted to that feeling, because it's an amazing feeling that you can get a million things done in 10 minutes, right? And we want to keep that, but that's just really difficult to do. And what we know from research is that the majority of workers in the workplace, they have a tendency to be more on the right side of this curve than on the left side. Yeah, and this has also been really well established. So for example, even though we want people to be in the zone, most people, though, their brains are more in a reactive and stress state. And if they have even more, as if they get pushed even more, if they take things even more serious, then that stress leads to avoidance. Right. And that's where, because very often I have, people say, it's like, oh, when I'm really stressed, all I want to do is play games on my kind of laptop or on my phone or something like that, because that calms me down. In reality, what that is, it's not that necessarily that you're calming down, is that you're distracting yourself by avoiding, right, the situation that you're in, with the hope that then your neurobiology will then kind of go to the other side of the curve and go back to normal. And so we avoid conversations, we even avoid people, right, to a point. And if that doesn't work, then we become aggressive. Yeah. And so we see a lot of aggression and microaggression in the workplace today, because people have a tendency to be kept on the right side of that curve, because for some reason we as managers and leaders believe that that's where they're supposed to be. Now think about that. If you want your team being creative, you want them to be inspiring, problem solving, all of these kind of things, you kind of want them on the left side of the curve, don't you? Not on the right side of the curve. And this is what's fascinating, is that degree of creativity, right, and play on the left side of the curve, just slightly to the left, is where the brain performs best. So if you have people in your team that are reactive in nature, they're constantly responding to like, oh, I need to get on this, and they treat everything with, this degree of urgency, right? Because it's all equally important and serious. That degree of reactivity and stress, their performance is already going down. And as a leader, if you know how to catch that, and then to say to somebody, hey, listen, you need to give yourself 10 minutes, right? Go do something else. Go, just take 10 minutes, right? Go do some breathing exercises, go play a game, whatever it is. But you need to bring your neurobiology back down to, kind of like towards the zone, or even in that creative space, because that's going to serve you much better. Right. And so all of the research is showing that being on the right side of the curve is not serving you, but it's also not serving your people. And if what you're doing is not serving you or serving your people, why do it? Right? Unless, of course, you yourself are on the right side of the curve. Because if you yourself are on the right side of the curve, it's difficult for you to make that decision too, because you're reactive in nature, you're stressed, you're all of these kind of things. And I think that's what is one of the greatest challenges at work, right? Is that stressed people, stressed leaders create stressed workers.
And that's a great point. And I think really relates to the top-down approach in leadership, right?
Yeah.
That the way that the senior most person, the way that they feel trickles down to whoever they work with, whoever they manage, and it trickles all the way down. So I think it's especially important as a leader or someone in management position to be able to embody that and stay on that left side of the curve.
Yeah, and think about it, right? Not just for ourselves being on that, if we live on that right side of that curve, but also everybody in our team lives on that right side here. What are we doing to their brains? Because when they are not on the left side of that curve, that part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, stops working. It doesn't have to work anymore. And so it becomes weaker, and it becomes more difficult for people to access that part of the brain. So we're destroying all forms of creativity and imagination and all of those kind of things in our people simply because we are stressed. Right? And that is the cost of seriousness. The cost of seriousness is that it costs you money. Because if your people aren't able to be on that left side of the curve, they can't produce the type of work that you might need to far exceed any form of, kind of growth expectations you might want for your organization. You're always going to be performing under potential. Yeah, and you might be happy with that, you might not be happy with that, but at the end of the day, that's what you're doing. Yeah. And Kilani, you had to closing off, you had some tips for kind of like, hey, what do we do about this?
Yeah, I have 3 main ways to, when you feel yourself taking either your life or your job too seriously, a few things to kind of pull you back towards that left side a little bit. The first one I think is the biggest one to get out of the way here, because I think a lot of the times we spend our time on the right side of that curve because we feel this need to either prove ourselves, or there's this feeling of unworthiness in whatever we're doing, whether that's at work, whether it's something in your personal life. The reason why we tend to push ourselves a little too hard into that right side is because we feel the need to prove ourselves. So I think first and foremost, understanding that, and also understanding that whatever you do in this area, whatever you achieve, does not dictate your worthiness, and that those two things are separate entirely. Another thing is to, and I know this one is a little cliche, but to focus on the good parts of whatever you're facing. So if there's a challenge, if something feels really, really big and really serious, like the Xerox example, it can get really easy to get obsessed with what's going wrong, but to look for even the smallest things that are right. For example, sure, this might be a big issue that we do have to look at and fix, but we can get a good night's sleep tonight because no one's going to die because their copy machine doesn't work, right? And then last but not least, this one's just a fun one that I personally like to do as well, and that's to dance it out. And it doesn't have to be dance per se, but fun movement is kind of the key here, is do something to get your body moving. Get out of your mind, get out of the cyclical thoughts that are going on, get your body moving. Because as we know and we've talked about before, by getting your body moving, that changes the way that you think, that changes the way that you show up, and changes the opportunities that are available to you. So it just kind of acts as a fun little reset.
Yeah, and it flushes out the you know the neurochemicals that are driving a lot of that over arousal too, right? So as you're moving, and you know, energetically, we can translate that too, from kind of being in this heavy, stable place to moving yourself in a place where you feel light, because there's no way you can dance without feeling light, right? You know, because that's what, you know, dance and fun movement generates lightness in our personal energy, right? You know, and there's no way that you can live in lightness and be on the right side of the curve, right? You know, the right side of the curve is more that determined / heavy energy, and the left side of the curve is more the inviting and light energy, you know. So that's another great way of analyzing that for yourself too. And so shifting your energy, you know, to more kind of that lightness and inviting type energy, and with play and fun and dance and movements and all of those kind of things, is one of the quickest and fastest ways of just sliding yourself back to that left side. And then you know, and you'll find that you'll be able to do much more with yourself and with your people than if you just keep them on the right hand side. Yeah, awesome. All right, I think that's it for me today. How about you, Kilani? Oh, I think I lost your audio.
Oh, sorry. I muted myself. I had Google started talking in the background. It's a very
funny.
It's funny. I'm the only one who lives here, and it's a very chatty house tonight, from between the cat, the Google. All right. Yeah, that's all from my end as well, is what I said.
Awesome. All right. Well, I want to thank you all very much, and remember that if you want to replay this live stream, it is stored on YouTube. So you can always, you know, look it up on the Level 5 Partners YouTube channel, and then you can always share this. You know, if you happen to have a boss who takes life way too seriously, or colleagues that take work way too seriously, feel free to share this with them as well. And you know, it might be helpful for everybody. So yeah, so then that's all from us, and I want to wish you a great rest of the week, and we will see you in the next broadcast.
All right, thanks everyone.
Okay, see you. Bye.